Hi, my name is David Greenwald with the Davis Vanguard, and we are interviewing today council candidates, and Lucas Frerichs is our first candidate. He is a challenger for the Davis City Council election, which is now less than a month away. Welcome, Lucas.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
So, Lucas, we don't have a whole lot of time here, but for those unfamiliar with you, maybe a 30-second introduction to who you are and why you're running.
Sure. Well, my name is Lucas Frerichs. I'm currently chair of the City of Davis's Planning Commission. I've been on the Planning Commission for 4 years now, but I've also served on 4 city commissions over the past 10 years. I am running for City Council because I think there is definitely a need in change in direction on the council. I think I bring a lot of real-world experience between my service on various city commissions, as well as my background serving on the boards of directors of a number of organizations here in the community. The Davis Food Co-op for 9 years, YOLO Mutual Housing Association, building affordable housing for 9 years, Acme Theater Company, Davis Media Access, the YOLO Basin Foundation are just some of the organizations that I've been involved with. I think that it's really time to bring a new direction, though, to the City Council.
So one of our big concerns is, of course, the city budget, which has been facing a periodic deficit, but the bigger issues are things like unfunded liabilities, retirement health, things like that. What would you do on the council to address some of these pressing issues?
So I've said this in previous written statements and in various interviews and such, but it's really true. I think it's time to have a community-wide conversation about the priorities that we really want to see in this community, the types of programs and services that we've come to rely upon. You know, we're in a new fiscal era, and we're not able to actually provide for all of those programs and services. So it's time to actually really decide what we want to spend our limited resources on.
And when you say spending limited resources, does that mean people are going to have to be laid off from city government?
I don't know if it ultimately means they have to be laid off. I definitely think it's now a time for shared sacrifice, though, particularly with regards to employee health care and pension costs. You can't have employees retiring at age 50, with a full pension for the rest of their lives and full health care benefits. All cities across the state of California are facing these difficult fiscal financial times, and I think it's really imperative that we actually, in these negotiations with the upcoming negotiations, ongoing negotiations with the public employee unions, really get down to brass tacks and make some hard decisions, and there's going to have to be shared sacrifice across the board. Also, though, I think there's a real ability for us as the city council to be much more efficient in the way we spend our dollars. The city has various line items in its budget right now for paid interns, for example. Interns are very important, there's no question, but I did an internship when I was in college, and I just received credit for it. I wasn't also paid. Those are certainly, it's a small item, but there are many of those types of items across the board where the city could, particularly in these unprecedented fiscal times, actually be much more careful with how it spends the public's resources and public taxpayer dollars.
Well, let me ask you about that, because one of the points that we figured out last year was that Davis is probably facing, with its unfunded liabilities, with the cost of pension increases, with retiree health, spending $7 million more per year on these kinds of programs that we haven't funded fully in the past. Yeah. How are we going to get that by nailing a $20,000 internship position?
Right. I don't think that we get to a $7 million, budget, bridging that gap with just, going through and looking for efficiencies. But the point, I think, so there are ways, and I'll get to that in a second, in which we do that, but I think that we really do need to actually go through line by line and look at where there are more ways to be efficient. Both the school district and the City of Davis both have a separate information technology department, and they're right across the street from each other. There's no reason why we shouldn't be in negotiations with the school district, for example, to actually combine those two departments. They're performing the same functions for 2 separate local government entities. We should actually be working together in this day and age to do that. Another example would be joint purchasing. I think there's a real ability to do joint purchasing with both the school district, the county, even the university. That's something that could actually really save the city a lot of money over the long run. Again, it doesn't meet the $7 million. The real thing that we have to do in that regard is go ahead and really, look for concessions from employees. And it may ultimately mean some consolidation of employees, but I think I would much rather see some concessions be taken, over the long term rather than laying anyone off. I mean, I do think the morale within the public employees in the city staff is actually on the decline, and I think is evidenced by the fact that we've had several prominent city employees. First, the deputy city manager, finance manager, Paul Novazio, moved to the city of Woodland to be city manager there, but also now just announced yesterday is that principal planner Mike Webb in the city's planning department has left to accept a job in the city of Placerville. So we're continuing to see a lot of brain drain, brain trust, brain drain happening at the city staff level.
Well, before we run out of time here, let's address a critical issue that arose this week. You were rightly outspoken against the attack mailer.
Yeah.
What can the council do to deal with the negativity of campaigning? This was remarkably, actually, before that, a very civil campaign. But how can we deal with the outside influence of money and special interests in these kinds of elections?
I think it's interesting. I think this has become a universal issue across the board, whether it's in city council races here in Yolo County or in California, and then up through the state level and all across. Obviously we've been inundated with negative ads and such, and i.e. expenditures, these super PACs happening at the federal level during the presidential campaign. So it's a campaign where finance reform is a huge issue. There have been issues at the Supreme Court, Citizens United case, sort of treating corporations, as individuals and allowing for unlimited dollars to be spent. There's a real need for reform. Locally, though, one thing I think that's really a positive thing that you have in the city of Davis is the $100 per person maximum campaign contribution limit. It really, provides, a sort of parity when if someone gives you $25, they really feel like they've really made a difference in your campaign. If someone gives you $100, they also feel like that, certainly. But if the city didn't have those limits, and for example, we had someone giving $25 and someone giving $1,000, you would think that there was definitely potentially some undue influence from the people that are giving $1,000. But I think that notion of having $100 or less is a very good one, and it actually helps mitigate for some of the negative campaigning that can happen.
Well, let me ask you that because the $100 limit has been put in at least 2 decades ago. Right. Obviously, inflation has greatly reduced the impact of 100. Do you think it should be raised to maybe 200 or 250 or something like that?
I haven't, I've been very fortunate that I've had a very broad base of support in this community. So when I've asked people for contributions of up to $100 or less, the community has been responding. I made a conscious decision to not, and along with my wife, we made a joint decision to not lend ourselves any money for this campaign. We felt that it's very important, if I'm going to run for city council, to actually go and seek donations from members of the community and seek support. And I think that, there's other cities in the region, and Berkeley is one of them that has a $200 limit, but we'll see if that needs to be adjusted in the future. I think it's fine for now.
Well, unfortunately, the time is up. Thank you so much. I know this has been very brief, and why don't you give everybody your website so they can learn more about you?
Great, thanks very much. It's Lucas, Lucas, for FOR, council.org. Lucas for council. Lucas for city council. I'm sorry. LucasForCityCouncil.org.
Great.
Very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks. This has been David Greenwald for the Davis Vanguard, and that was Lucas Frerichs. Vote on June 5th.
June 5th.
Thanks.